All right. Welcome to Live Impact News here on this Tuesday afternoon. It's 1:02 p.m. We are a little late getting started today, 2 minutes behind schedule, and I must place the blame for that on really just myself. That is completely my fault. I do apologize, but no worries, because we have an hour and 58 minutes of all of the most live, breaking, impactful news for you here in Hampton Roads, nationally and globally as well. And today it appears as though we have headlines that will impact all three of those places. So we begin here in Hampton Roads with your weather forecast. Now, we know the Northeast blanketed by heavy snow over the course of the last few days, and we will touch on that a little later on. But first, meteorologist Evan Stewart is here to talk about what we're seeing in our viewing area.
Yeah.
Evan, how's it going?
Good, and glad to be here. And yes, we're seeing sunshine.
Okay.
A lot of sunshine
Very
out there
good.
this afternoon. That's good news. You can see here, actually. There we go. You can see there behind me that we've got the sunny skies out there across the Elizabeth River. And we are looking at some cold temperatures, though. We're only in the upper 30s and low 40s right now across Hampton Roads. We're not going to get much warmer than that as we go through this afternoon. But again, lots of sunshine around the area. And I sort of want to stop things here on the satellite and radar. And you'll notice there is a lot of white that is showing up here across parts of New England as I sort of put everything in motion. You'll notice that a lot of this white doesn't move. That's the actual snowpack that is on the ground. So the satellite, we used the visible satellite during the daytime, and that is basically just a picture of the clouds of the Earth. And, you know, all of this is the snow that is on the ground. Of course, we already know that parts of, New Jersey, up into New York and Connecticut, Rhode Island and Massachusetts, everywhere, had significant snows, and each of those 5 states had at least one location that picked up over 30 inches of snow. So this was a massive nor'easter now that has moved away, and we had wind gusts out towards Montauk of over 80 miles per hour. So this was a massive storm. We just got caught with the storm as it was just starting to form. That's why we started out as the rain, and then we saw eventually it changed over to snow. We still got almost a foot up along portions of the eastern shore through Accomack County. Now, as we go through this afternoon, looking at a lot of sunshine, temperatures only in the low to mid 40s. By this evening, we'll be back into the 30s. Still pretty pleasant, not as warm as I think a lot of folks would like. We should normally be into the mid 50s by this time of year. And then as we get into the overnight, looking at some clouds moving in and a chance at maybe a shower tomorrow or even a snow flurry. It's not going to be anything heavy. It's not going to accumulate or cause any issues. And by the afternoon, we should start to see the clouds break up and temperatures in the 50s. So warmer back where we should be for this time of year. Connor?
Okay, very good. That is what we're looking for, is for that warm-up that's coming late week and into the weekend. And as you said, they are still struggling with that snow up in the Northeast. You saw on that map how there is still just plenty of snow on the ground up there. So we're lucky to have been spared some of that here. You may have mentioned this already. What are we looking at in terms of wind? Because I was out there this afternoon, and a lot less windy than it has been recently.
Yeah, it's still a little bit breezy, and it'll still be breezy this afternoon. We're looking at winds out of the northwest, 10 to 15 miles per hour.
Okay.
And by tonight and tomorrow, winds will switch around towards the south and southwest, and it'll be a breezy day again tomorrow, but it's those southwest winds that'll help warm things up for us. So while the winds out there today make it cooler, it is going to warm us back up. Now, this isn't a significant big warm up that is coming up. We're just actually going to see temperatures back closer to normal or average for this time of year in late February, early March, which, of course, March 1st starts on Sunday, the first day of meteorological spring.
Okay, very good to know. And you mentioned the Northeast. Right now on our live cameras, they're setting up for a press conference in New York. They're setting up for a press conference in Massachusetts. Governor Healy, Mayor Mamdani will both be speaking with updates on that winter storm. So they continue to deal with that situation. Meanwhile, here, occasional rain, spotty showers, morning showers give sort of an accurate summarization of the precipitation we're dealing with. Inconsistent, but not absent in terms of rain coming up for the rest of the week here.
That's right, and it will be rain, for us as we go Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Again, maybe a snow flurry in a couple of spots on Wednesday. Next Monday, we're watching. Right now we have temperatures in the 30s and 40s, and depending on the timing, there might be another threat of a little bit of snow here in Hampton Roads early next week. It's a little early to start to nail things down, but we are watching, that drop in temperatures as we get into Monday and the potential there for, something at this point. Right now we've got a chance of showers and temperatures in the mid 40s. So we'll have to watch what happens next Monday. But let's get through this weekend.
Let's get through the weekend.
Yeah, it's a nice weekend, seasonable temperatures. Looking dry. We're not looking at any kind of rain or snow this weekend.
And I know that I've got some recency bias going here, of course, as usual, but you talk about that Monday morning, how there's that slight threat of potential snow. It feels like we've had more of those than usual this winter, where maybe we're not getting that full-on major winter storm that Hampton Roads could get once every couple of years, but more sort of casual snowfalls than in past winters, if I remember correctly. Is that fair?
It seems like that. Yeah. It seems like that we've seen, more of, these little glancing blows and, quick little snow shower
glancing
or rain shower.
blows.
Yeah. So it seems like it's been more frequent this winter.
Yeah.
And it certainly has been colder this winter than, it typically is.
Will you guys do, once we move into the spring, will you and your team do anything where you kind of get a full summary of what we saw in terms of snow, wintry mix, ice? Will you kind of get those grand totals for the winter?
Yes, we've already got some totals as far as snowfall in Hampton Roads, and I'll be able to pull that up here in a moment. And, because every day we get a summary from the National Weather Service that tells us how we're doing for the month, how we're doing for the year, how we're doing for the season, which of course meteorological winter is December, January, February. So let's see here as we pull this up.
And yeah, we like to, sometimes as you're going through it, it can seem like a lot, an inch here, an inch there. Yeah. But then you actually get to those totals and it turns out it's not all that unique. It feels like it in the moment because we have so many of those small flurries this year. So I will be interested to see if we end up with
so far for
elevated totals.
Yeah, for the season, we've had 5.4 inches of snow.
Now that feels like not much when you read it out like that, all clumped into one. 5.4 inches. It seems like it feels like we've had more than that, at least I would say.
Right, but no, by the time it all, and this is at Norfolk International Airport.
Right.
Other areas have seen more with the storm. Last month, Elizabeth City saw a lot more snow out of it, and this storm that we just had over the weekend, of course, Eastern Shore picked up about a foot. So snowfall, like rainfall, it can vary from neighborhood to neighborhood, town to town, county to county. And I think that's maybe why it feels like, there's been more, for some folks and less for others.
Okay, very good. We look forward to getting a more sort of full understanding of what we ended up with in terms of precipitation this winter. But for the time being, we look forward to this slight warm up or getting ourselves back to average. Now, is there anything else we need to know? I know that you have got some stuff going on this afternoon that you got to get free for here.
That's right. Yeah, I got a few things to do here for work. We again, a little bit of a warm up over the next couple of days. This afternoon still cold. We'll be back closer to normal here Wednesday into Thursday, and we're looking at that rain on Thursday. It's not going to be a total washout of a day, but I think it's just going to be a wet day on Thursday, mid-50s, a little bit of that drop on Friday. But the weekend, again, never hurts to look forward to the weekend.
And you look at Saturday, you've got that low of 38, but then by the time you get to Sunday, really a very small range there, 49 to 55. We're going to be really cruising in those early to mid 50s for all of Sunday. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, those temperatures are just going to nicely warm up for us.
Okay, very good. Evan Stewart, you're the best. We appreciate you taking a little bit of time. Good luck with all of your errands and tasks that you've got today. You're telling me a little bit about that outside. And we'll see you at 4 o'clock on 13 News Now.
Sounds good.
All right, now what we're going to do here is we're going to take a quick break. When we come back from that break, you may have heard this term recently here on 13 News Now. It's LULAC, the League of United Latin American Citizens, holding a press conference from Washington, D.C., demanding action in the murder of U.S. Navy sailor Angelina Resendez, according to the press release that they have sent to us. LULAC held a press conference not too long ago regarding the disappearance and death of Angelina Resendez, in which Miss Resendez, her mother, was a participant, and now another press conference today calling for transparency, accountability, and independent review, all within the U.S. Navy in connection to the death of sailor Angelina Resendez. LULAC leadership takes to the podium, but we are going to wait until after this break to head out there. So first, a quick commercial, and then we'll go and listen in on that press conference. All right, welcome back to Live Impact News, where we are going to head out to Washington, D.C. for that LULAC press conference. Esmeralda Castle at the podium right now. Esmeralda Castle, the mother of Angelina Resendez. Let's head out to Washington, D.C.
They issued it to Congress, right? The members of Congress that were asking questions. The Department of the Navy, the Secretary of the Navy issued a statement. It was directed to Senator Kane. In both those statements are contradictions of statements of fact provided at the Article 2 hearing. One of them is from the Department, the Navy, right? The Secretary of the Navy put in a document that he was told that what happened was she got locked out of her room. She texted a friend. The friend came and could not find her. That was the end. That's all he knew. That we know was not true. That's not true. That's not what happened. But why is the Secretary of the Navy's commanders giving this information to him as the truth? I believe that we're not going to call anybody liars, and I'm not going to accuse people, and I'm not going to claim things that aren't true, but that is incompetence to my simple civilian standard. That, to me, seems like they don't care. Someone does not care. Someone is not taking this serious enough that they're going to give the Secretary of the Navy information for him to use as truth. And we all know that that's not true. That absolutely should be investigated. We cannot trust the command itself to do its own investigations. They've shown that they are not able to. You have that the first statement that came out from the command. They admitted that they never reported her missing, and that other the police, right? The state of Norfolk is the one who informed NCIS that she was missing. Not one time did her command make that report. I don't care if 500 people reported her missing. The command should have been one of them, and that did not happen. And I want to believe that there is a policy and there is a statute that requires that they look for their sailors. And that's all we're asking for, right? Is an independent investigation into these things. Like, this is institutional installation versus enforceable accountability. We have a closed system, and that cannot be the final authority on its own failures. We have statutes put in place to protect women, because of them, we have statutes, right? Congress has acted in our cries and attempts to, have justice and keep our service members safe. But those statutes aren't implemented or followed. And there is no other cause of action within those statutes. We need a cause of action for our sailors, for our service members, active duty and veterans. They should, there's a request that needs to be dealt with there. And thank you. I don't know what else to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, with all respect, I'm going to have to excuse the young people who need to go on to their next session, but the rest of us will remain, and this very important press event will continue. I want to thank Esme. Esme, please know that we will never abandon you. Please have a seat and join us right up front. So I would now like to introduce a woman who has stood with Esme, and that's Libby Lazaro. She is the military sexual trauma chairperson. Libby, please come up. Thank you very kindly. And if you would like to be excused, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for your support. Aren't they beautiful? Give them a round of applause. They're the future. Thank you, Libby.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. My name is Libby Lazaro, U.S. Army, retired Sergeant First Class, and combat veteran, as well as military sexual trauma chair for LULAC. Before I begin, I wanted to acknowledge what you just heard from Angelina's mother, Esme. She shared what no parent would ever have to learn through a criminal investigation. The details, the failures, and the painful reality of what happened to her daughter. We are here today in Washington, D.C. during this legislative conference because critical questions remain unanswered. We demand accountability and transparency regarding the May 29th murder of Sailor Angelina Resendez. She was murdered at a United States military base, on a base that represents structure, discipline, and duty, on a base where service members are supposed to be protected, on a base where leadership carries a responsibility and duty not only to mission readiness, but to human life. We stand here today because of the consequences of inaction are not abstract. They are human. They are families that will live with permanent loss. The consequences are service members who question whether their safety is truly a priority. This press conference is about responsibility, institutional responsibility, and command responsibility. Where warning signs are missed, concerns dismissed, policies fail, and oversight breaks down. It fails the very people it's meant to protect, those of us who protect our nation. The lack of preventable action did more than create vulnerability. It created opportunity. Opportunity for a violent serial offender. A predator left to move around freely within a system that should have stopped him. A predator who was transferred and free to exist within spaces that were meant to be secure. Left to choose his next prey. While those responsible for safeguarding others did not communicate the threat. That is not simply a failure of procedure or protocol. It is a result of an ineffective system. The United States military asks extraordinary commitment from those of us who serve. It demands loyalty, discipline, and integrity. In return, it carries an unbreakable obligation to safeguard its service members. Transparency is not optional. Accountability is not negotiable. We are here to ensure that Petty Officer Angelina Resendez is not reduced to a report, a story, or a closed case. We are here to ensure that her life and her loss compel change. When systems fail and no one answers for it, failure becomes precedent. I will give my remarks in Spanish. Mi nombre es Livier Lázaro, sargenta primera clase retirada de los Estados Unidos, encargada del Comité de Tramo Sexual del LULAC. Quiero reconocer lo que acabamos de escuchar de la madre de Angelina Resendez. Ella compartió lo que ningún padre debería de tener que conocer a través de una investigación criminal. Los detalles, las fallas y la dolorosa realidad de lo que le pasó a su hija. Estamos aquí hoy en Washington, D.C. durante esta conferencia legislativa porque preguntas siguen sin respuesta. Exigimos responsabilidad y transparencia con el respeto del asesinato del día del 29 de mayo de la marinera Angelina Resendez. Fue asesinada en una base militar de los Estados Unidos. En una base que representa estructura, disciplina y deber. En una base donde se supone que los miembros de servicio están protegidos. En una base donde el liderazgo tiene la responsabilidad y el deber, no solo de la preocupación de la misión, pero de la vida humana. Estamos aquí hoy porque las consecuencias de inacción no son abstractas, son humanas, como pueden ver aquí detrás de mí. Son familias que viven con pérdida permanente. Son miembros del servicio que cuestionan si su seguridad es realmente una prioridad. Esta conferencia de prensa se trata de responsabilidad institucional, responsabilidad de los que estaban a cargo. Cuando se ignoran señales de advertencia y se descartan preocupaciones y se rompe la supervisión, se falla precisamente a los quienes suponen que deberían de haber protegido, a quienes protegen a esta nación. La falta de acción preventiva hizo más que crear vulnerabilidad, creó oportunidad. Oportunidad para un delincuente violento, un depredador que pudo moverse libremente dentro de un sistema que debió detenerlo. Un depredador que fue transferido y libre de existir en espacios que deberían de ser seguros. Libre para elegir a su próxima víctima. Mientras quienes eran responsables de proteger a otros no comunicaron la amenaza. Esto no es simplemente una falla de procedimiento o de protocolo, es un resultado de un sistema ineficaz. Las Fuerzas Armadas de los Estados Unidos exigen un compromiso extraordinario de quienes servimos. Exigen lealtad, disciplina y integridad. A cambio tienen una obligación inquebrantable de proteger a sus miembros. La transparencia no es opcional. La rendición de cuentas no es negociable. Estamos aquí para asegurar que la suboficial Angelina Resendez no sea reducida a un informe, a una historia o un caso cerrado. Estamos aquí para asegurar que su vida y su pérdida obliguen el cambio. Cuando los sistemas fallan y nadie responde por ello, el fracaso se convierte en precedente. Muchas gracias.
Before I introduce our final speaker and open it up for your questions, I wonder if we would be here today if the last name was not Resendez, if the last name was not Martinez, if the last name was not Guillen. I wonder we would be here today if Ms. Resendez looked differently, if the color of her eyes were different, the color of her hair, yes, even the color of her skin. I asked the Secretary of Defense, would you be standing where you are today without the Latino community supporting the rank and file members of this military branch of the U.S. Navy? And I asked the mothers, nuestras madres latinas, will you do as Mama Guillen said when her daughter Vanessa Guillen went? Do not send your children into a military service rank or branch that will not protect the lives of your sons and daughters. I give you with that the chair of the Military and Veterans Affairs Committee, Larry Romo. Vice President.
I probably served as an elect National Vice President for Veterans, but also I served 28 years and retired as an Air Force officer, Lieutenant Colonel. And also I had the privilege of serving for 7 years as a Director of Selective Service for the United States. And I'm also a member of the National Security Leaders for America, which is important because we want to have an optimal national security posture here in the United States. And if you can't take care of your military members, you weaken national security. And in this case, the Navy weakened national security because they didn't protect 3 of their females, and also there was 2 other civilians that were affected. So the Navy was negligent in this regards. So I'm going to close it, and I have a list of why we're here today, and what we want the Navy to respond to and to hold them accountable for accountability and justice. Why did the Navy allow accused United States Navy Sailor Jeremiah Copeland to enlist in the Navy even though he had a history of assaulting women? The U.S. Navy recruiter should have done a background check to include unsealing Copeland's juvenile record, which the recruiter was obligated to do by law. All this could have been prevented. All these assaults and murder could have been prevented if the Navy recruiting service had done their job and not allowed him to join the Navy. Our poor background checks happening in other instances. Why did the Navy transfer Copeland to other Navy ships? It was like one of the ship captains wanted to get rid of their problem sailor. Why did the Navy allow Copeland to be free in the barracks while being investigated for the other 3 sexual assaults on Navy personnel and also a domestic abuse of a partner? They allowed a sexual predator loose in the barracks and got another victim. This time, a sailor, Angela Resendez, was murdered. Why did the Navy mishandle the search for U.S. Navy Culinary Specialist Angela Resendez once she was declared missing? Why have no Navy supervisors been held accountable as the U.S. Army did for United States Army soldier Vanessa Guillen when she was murdered? Why did the U.S. Navy give the remains full of maggots to the mother of U.S. Navy Culinary Specialist Angela Resendez? This is why LULAC has asked Congress, the House, and the Senate Armed Services Committee to get the Navy to create an independent committee to review the actions and inactions by the U.S. Navy and make recommendations. The United States Army, which was proactive, created an independent committee for the Vanessa Guillen murder, which ensured accountability and justice. What is the Navy hiding? Thank you.
Friends, we want to give you an opportunity to ask any questions, make any comments that you wish. May I ask our distinguished speakers to come up? And if you have a question for any of them, please step up and or stand up and just ask them whatever you wish to know or how else we may be able to support them. I want to recognize Ramaric DeLuna, who is here from the Vice President of the Northeastern United States. We have many distinguished members. Ray Mancera, Vice President from the Southwestern United States. So we have a lot of distinguished folks here, and of course the young people had to go on to their session. But does anyone have a question? Yes, Vice President Mancera.
Yes, thank you, and we
Please speak up.
Our condolences, Ms. Guillen, for your loss, for the Resendez. My question is, and I walked in a little late, has there any bill been filed in reference to this by Congress to ask the Navy to comply and give any and all information?
Please step up, if you would.
So, yes, they're in meeting. 2 letters were issued to the Navy asking several questions. The responses that were received are inconsistent with the statement of the facts given to us by the prosecutor during the Article 32 hearing. So both letters, right? There was one sent to the base specifically. There was one sent to the Secretary of the Navy. Both those were responded to. The responses are, again, they contradict each other and they're inconsistent with what we know to be true.
And no files have been shared with you of any kind?
Just just those 2 letters, and those are public.
Any other questions or comments that anyone would like to ask or share?
Yes, well, asking for independent investigations, but what has the military done on their level? Who conducts investigations, firsthand before this would be outsourced?
And Larry, could you step up also and comment on that, please? Please step up.
The accused has been charged. So the NCIS is doing those investigations internally. But really, there has been no investigation of what we asked the Navy to do in regards to who was held accountable, why the supervisors give the wrong information to her, why the supervisors, why did they protect the sailor? So all those questions have not been answered. So the only thing the investigation directly have to do with the prosecution. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Esme.
From what I understand, it is the command's responsibility to complete a thorough investigation.
And that would be the command at the base where she was located?
That would be her commander, the ones who did not report her missing, the ones who did not stop any of the, they had ample opportunity to prevent this from happening. You have, the command of the petty chief who saw her wrapped up in a blanket and did nothing. So we cannot depend on the command to give us an unbiased investigation.
I want to ask Adrian, what other things do you think we might be able to press the Navy to create an independent committee in regards to the National Women's Law Center? What are your thoughts on that?
Would you step up at the microphone? Thank you.
Yeah, we are supporting the request for an independent investigation and generally pushing for greater transparency and accountability regarding the reforms that have been put into place and all of these procedures. We know that transparency is needed, and we are working with Congress to try to ensure that what's happening in the military is available to members of Congress and the public.
Thank you. One more.
David, I have a follow-up question on mine regarding the independent investigation. Okay, in my community, there's a homicide, and let's say it's in-house, a law enforcement officer. Then you get the Texas Rangers, an outside agency, called in, and y'all ask for independent. Who would this independent agency be to come in, pick up where the military left off?
Well, what we're asking for is not a criminal investigation. We're asking for a systemic investigation to figure out the gaps and the failures. So they're 2 different things. We're asking for Vanessa Guillen. We actually had HVAC do the independent investigation, and through those findings is how we found out what we needed to fix or enforce, and that was where we got the Vanessa Guillen Act. So that's why those answers are crucial, because it's not criminal. It is institutional.
Or as the criminal investigation proceeds, they want to know what's going on within the structure of the command and the military. We have a question from President Hector Flores. Yes, sir, Mr. President.
My question is, at what point does it go outside the military command? Do they complete the investigation and control it? And at what point would they go, say, for the U.S. Attorney's Office or another entity that can look at it with fresh eyes and can look at the evidence and make a decision? It's a homicide, now we need to go prosecute. It stay within the military or it goes outside?
It never leaves the the military.
That's a problem.
It stays within its closed universe. Even if, let's say the Vanessa Guillen Act, right? There's supposed to be a special prosecution, third party taken outside of the command. But after that investigation's over, it's still command decision, right? It still goes back to the command to make specific decisions on how to move forward judicially and things like that. So no, it never leaves the
My
military.
secondary question to that, I'm glad we're having a press conference for one, but what about the media and those that can actually dig in and get the true information as to what has happened, detail by detail?
They're denied.
Not the New York Times.
So every time media tries to send out, questionnaires asking for information, they don't receive any information from the military, only what's already been.
One more question, please. Yes, sir. We have Vice President Gabe Portugal from the Northwest.
Yes. Question for you, Larry. With all these names, so many people, so many of our Latino sisters, brothers, is there a possibility to maybe do a class action lawsuit against, in this case, this agency or this?
You can answer that.
Yeah.
I have right now, the Ferris Doctrine stands. That prevents active duty, and you can help me with that, because she's the attorney, I'm just the student. But
Well, this is not my area of expertise, but in terms of the class action, as she mentioned, there's the Federal Tort Claims Act, but because this is considered to be within duty.
Incident of service.
Yeah, there are barriers, what's referred to as the Ferris Act.
Congress has not defined what incident to service means, and so the courts have defined it for Congress, and so the Supreme Court has defined incident to service to mean all active duty. Anytime that you're active duty and something happens to you, you cannot sue the government. You are barred, and their families as well. So right now, if I wanted to bring a claim against the government for wrongful death because of what happened to my daughter, because it was gross negligence in the situation, I'm barred. She's barred.
Yes.
I'm going to make one last comment in that I'm very persistent in demanding an independent committee. We have one of our LULAC members, Kat Rodriguez, who was on that for the Vanessa Guillen murder, and they made close to 200 findings. And see, that's how we hold the Navy accountable, the Army accountable, because they actually end up firing people because of the recommendations. They went thorough. Even though it was a criminal investigation, still some of those Navy people were charged with negligence within their system. So that's a way to go because it's outside the chain of command.
Stay here. Ramarie DeLuna, Vice President for the Northeast.
So it looks to me that, we did a lot of work behind the Vanessa Guillen Act, and I'm sorry about what's happened with Angela. Shouldn't we be expanding this then to all the branches to make sure that they are all compliant and having independent reviews of also Space Force, also the Air Force, also the Coast Guard, to make sure that this doesn't happen in other branches as well, and if it is happening, that we stop this from happening to other parents and other families as well.
Right.
I don't think the statute was limited to one branch. It does not say that it's limited to one branch. This is law implemented for the entire military.
The Vanessa Guillen Act was for all the branches, but here's the catch, or the gotcha. There are certain commands that are more proactive in implementing these measures than others. And so it's become for LULAC a base by base, installation by installation, commander by commander, and command by command effort. Were it not for Esme and the leadership behind her, we wouldn't even be here today because it's just another statistic.
So that's where my point goes to. I don't think we should stop at the Navy. We should be asking Congress to enforce the laws we have put in place. Enough is enough. We want every single base, every single ship to be monitored, to have an independent review, to make sure that they are compliant with the law. This is a law. It's been a law for years now.
Yes.
Make sure that they're all in compliance. We don't want to see this happen again.
So I would even suggest to add an amendment to give victims, that fall under this statute, a cause of action outside of the military, away to the court.
I apologize. I want to thank you for coming from so far, from Texas, Adrian, thank you for the National Legal Center for Women, and thank you for the leadership you've shown. Libby, I know you come from California. Thank you for having been here. Mr. Chair, thank you very much. National Vice President from LULAC, and everyone who's here, and everyone who may be watching and will get this at some point in the next few days. Let this not be a statistic. Know this, that LULAC is going to continue to stay on this case, and if you have any service member who's experiencing military sexual trauma, let us not have another victim, and we will never forget Angelina Resendez. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you.
All right, so that concludes that press conference from LULAC, including Esmeralda Castle, the mother of Angelina Resendez, speaking. You saw the wall behind them saying, "Stop military injustices," talking about far more perhaps in that situation than just Angelina Resendez. But of course, Esmeralda Castle has been vocal in her search for justice for her daughter. Now, they mentioned a lawsuit. There was a question about whether or not they would bring a lawsuit against the military. I want to give a little bit of background on some of what prevents action like that from being taken. This is a 1950 Supreme Court decision, Ferris versus the United States. This generally bars individuals from pursuing tort lawsuits against the United States for injuries arising from active duty military service, establishing what is known as the Ferris Doctrine. The Ferris Doctrine's soundness has been a topic of sustained debate among lawmakers, judges, and scholars since its inception. The Supreme Court has on several occasions, however, declined requests to modify the doctrine. This sidebar analyzes the Ferris Doctrine. Okay, so that is information from congress.gov on the Ferris Doctrine, which has established that precedent preventing lawsuits pursued by individuals against the United States for injuries during active duty military service or arising from active duty military service. So a small piece of the continued push for accountability and justice in the case of Angelina Resendez from Esmeralda Castle and the rest of her supporters and team there. But an important piece of background, as that question did come up in that particular press conference. Okay, we're going to shift gears here with that press conference ending. We're going to go back to some of our coverage of this extreme winter weather that the Northeast has been experiencing. The mayor of New York City, Zohran Mamdani, has taken to the podium in New York City. He and other officials have been talking for quite some time. We're going to go live out to that press conference, though I will say at this point I'm absolutely shocked that I have not seen the signal from Nia Campbell to go to break. I was waiting for it. I was anticipating it. I was expecting it. Nia, do we not need to go to break? Let's do it. Let's do a brief commercial. We will get out to New York City as soon as we are back. All right, thanks for sticking with us. It took me far too long, but maybe I'm starting to get this down in terms of making sure we find places for breaks within the stream. But enough of me. Let's go out to Zohran Mamdani right now as he talks about the winter storm situation in New York City.
Fact that WFP chapter members voted for Claire Valdez. She is an incredible assembly member and someone that I'm so excited to be supporting, and I look forward to her being elected as the next congressperson to represent that district. And I think that she possesses within her a unique ability of bringing forward the exact things that have been missing from our politics for far too long, not just a fight for workers at the heart of our politics, but also an understanding of the importance of unions and what increased union density can mean in the fight against income inequality, especially as someone who rose through the ranks of UAW, which is also a union that she's been endorsed by. And can you remind me of your first question?
I wanted to ask.
Oh, about buses and teachers, yes. So right now, I would say on an average day, we have about 150,000 students who take the bus to school. As of now, we've only received about 78 students' complaints that they're not been able to access those buses. And of the 8,000 routes, about only 15 of them reported delays. And with teachers, we have a workforce of about 78,800 teachers. About 12,000 of those teachers called out today. We were able to have more than 5,000 substitute teachers fill in their places.
Thanks. Liz, go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Mayor.
Hi, Liz.
I want to ask you two questions. One about the snowball incident. So you had the NYPD commissioner call it criminal. You had the governor weigh in and condemn it. You had a former governor weigh in and also tweet about it, demanding that you make a statement. How much of this is an overreaction, do you think? That's my first question. And then, do you want me to wait for the second?
Let's get them all.
Second question is about the Hunter College professor who made a racist remark during that Zoom about the Upper West Side school relocation. Can you talk about what you think is the appropriate punishment for something like that? And what does it say about the underlying tensions, that are going on in that debate over school relocation?
So I'll just first start with the second question, and then I'll also let the Chancellor share a few words. I think just before I pass it over, there's a reprehensible comment. And I think it is indicative of the exact kind of language that makes students feel as if they don't belong within our public school system. We are looking to build a public school system that is home for each and every person that calls this city home. And that's not what that language engenders. I'll just let the Chancellor add a few words.
I agree. It was abhorrent to listen to, and our students deserve so much better. And so we'll be working with the superintendent. As you know, I know that district quite intimately, and we'll be really leaning in and working with the school communities to make sure that we repair any harm that was done to our students and think through what our next step is regarding building the capacity of our teachers to deal with the underlying conditions that exist in our city when it comes to some of our concerns about schools.
Can I ask as a follow to the mayor, do you think she should be fired?
I think that's part of what the Chancellor said in terms of investigating the next steps that should be taken.
And on the snowball incident, are people overreacting, you think?
I'll leave it to others to share their opinions, but I've shared mine.
Mr. Mayor, I want to follow up on the snowball incident. The head of the PVA says that the people who were involved in attacking the police officers should be charged criminally with assault on a police officer. I wonder if you agree with that, if those people can be identified.
I don't. From the videos that I've seen, it looks like a snowball fight.
Mr. Mayor, in terms of the Code Blue, how long do you plan to continue that, and also continue the extra numbers of outreach workers?
At this time, our Enhanced Code Blue is set to continue through tomorrow morning. Obviously, we will keep New Yorkers up to date if that's going to be extended. However, I do want to just take an opportunity, as you've alluded to, the outreach workers have been at the heart of our efforts. And I want to say thank you to them, because what they've been doing is, no matter the conditions they've been out there, and reaching out to homeless New Yorkers, being able to make more than 250 placements. And their engagements with homeless New Yorkers have also helped to inform all of the steps we're taking to expedite our medium and long-term policies. I'll give you one example. In the response to the prior winter storm, we opened up additional shelters ahead of schedule. As we were learning of the scale of the need, we've been looking to expedite that across the board. So one of those shelters we opened up in Upper Manhattan in the response to the last storm, we now just added an additional 100 beds to that shelter. The reason that's important is we need to be able to reach out to homeless New Yorkers and present them with a wide variety of options. There are some homeless New Yorkers for whom they want to go to an H&H mobile van. There are others for whom they want to go to a warming bus or a warming center in a DOE school or an H&H site that's been repurposed as a warming site. And there are others for whom it's a shelter setting. We want to make sure we have every single option available so we can get New Yorkers off the streets. And as of now, I'm thankful to report that there are no reported deaths outside or in public areas as a result of this blizzard.
Thank you. Jason, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor?
Hey, how's it going?
Okay, New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani talking about a variety of topics, some related to the weather, some not as much during that portion of the press conference that we saw just now. I want to give a little bit of clarifying background information. You heard the mayor being asked about racist comments from a teacher, from a professor. We're on Newsweek.com here getting a little bit more information about that. Allison Friedman, a professor at Hunter College, has identified herself as the person heard making racist remarks during a February 10th virtual meeting of New York City's School District 3 Community Education Council. That's an update from the West Side Rag. Hunter College confirmed to Newsweek this past Saturday that it is reviewing the situation under its applicable conduct and non-discrimination policies. The clip has gone viral on social media. The remarks were made while an 8th grade student from the Community Action School was speaking about not wanting to lose her school, one of 3 Upper West Side schools under consideration for possible relocation or closure by the Department of Education, at which time, again, that racist remark from Allison Friedman, a professor at Hunter College, was heard over the air during that meeting. So that, the second part of the 2-part question that Zohran Mamdani and others were asked during that press conference. The other question about police officers and a snowball fight. New York, this comes from the Associated Press. New York City police are investigating after officers were pelted with snowballs while responding to a snowball fight at Washington Square Park in Manhattan. A video shows 2 uniformed officers pacing a walkway in the park Monday as snowballs fly at them from all directions, hitting the officers and covering them in snow. So that was the other portion of that question that was asked during that press conference. So 2 topics that are related to the weather in some way. They may have come about as a part of weather coverage, but have obviously veered off into other issues and questions that need to be asked. If there are updates to come on those 2 situations, then we will bring them to you, especially if the mayor makes more remarks regarding them. For now, New York City, not the only places that have been impacted by this winter storm. Let's go out to Massachusetts, where Governor Maura Healey is also giving a press conference. You can see behind her snow still piled up there in Massachusetts.
Yeah, I mean, look, I feel terrible for anybody without power. It's a really tough situation. I just came from talking to families and folks who were without power. And, you know, we've got folks who have health conditions, who are on medication. We've got little kids. I know the Red Cross and the teams are doing an outstanding job looking to care for people. But my message is the utilities have got the crews. We know that they're going to work as quickly as possible. And what I've asked of the utilities is let us know what that timeline is going to be for when you're going to get your power back on. And I know people will continue to work as quickly as possible, but anything we can do. And a reason I'm here is because I want to be on the ground, and I know the LG does as well. What do we need to do? What do we need to activate in addition to make sure people are getting the resources that they need?
What does a storm like this and the loss of power make you think about the state's investment in the grid at this point?
Look, it's always tough when you've got wires and poles that are in the air, right? And we've got trees, and then we've got natural forces. So, someday we'd like to see a grid built out that's actually underground, frankly, where we eliminate, these kinds of situations. But we got to work with what we've got, an infrastructure that's been built over decades. It's why, as governor, I've always invested in improvements to the grid and transmission. But, right now, today is about getting power back on. It's about getting those trucks up, those crews out, getting, the power restored. We can talk about important policy matters later, but right now it's about making sure that people are fed, housed, and kept warm.
And this clipper system that's coming through, how are you feeling about that in the next 2 days?
Well, that's why it's good it's sunny today. We've got to, do everything we can with teams. That's why I wanted extra support down in the region, clearing out as much snow as possible and getting that power restored as quickly as possible so that we're better prepared for the next weather event.
Some would say this was a pretty brutal winter so far. Do you have a message for our old man winter?
Look, no, we're New Englanders. We're tough, right? It's a tough situation for a lot of people, especially those who find themselves without power. But, look, we're New Englanders, we're Massachusetts. We know how to deal with this and also come together. And I really appreciate the support of other states. I reached out to Governor Scott in Vermont this morning to thank him for his assistance. And I've talked to other governors as well. But, it's about teamwork, and that's what we see happening. And, look, what day is it? We're almost in March, right? So it can only go on for so much longer. We're going to get there, no doubt.
Did this storm make you want to become a meteorologist or become governor again?
I'm very happy with my job. Feel very fortunate to have my job. Yeah. I don't want that job. Although I think the meteorologists called it right. They said it was going to be a doozy, and it was a doozy. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Take care. Be careful out there. Right? Yeah. I will. Well, I have better ones for this now.
Making sure.
I figured once we get
Okay, so caught the tail end of that press conference, but talking about those without power in the Massachusetts area and the continued struggles of moving past this winter storm. All right, we're going to do one more break, and then when we come back, we actually have a special guest who will be joining us live here on Impact News to talk about the upcoming State of the Union address from President Donald Trump, planned scheduled for tonight. That's coming up next after this brief commercial break. All right, back here on Live Impact News. Thank you for watching 13 News Now. Plus, we now transition to coverage of the State of the Union address. That is scheduled for 9 p.m. Eastern Time tonight. And we are going to welcome Virginia Tech political communications expert Casey Myers to the show now. Casey, first of all, thank you so much for joining us. How are you on this Tuesday?
Doing great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, and it could not have come at a better time because tonight is, of course, the State of the Union from President Donald Trump, the impending rebuttal from Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger, and it comes during a period of intense unrest here in the United States of America over the course of especially the last 6 months. I want to start, before we dive into content, I want to ask about tone. In terms of your expectations, what do you expect from President Trump when it comes to his approach to this particular State of the Union, with his approval rating across many different polls sitting much lower than it has at previous points in either of his two terms?
Well, the State of the Union, I think, for President Trump is similar to what we see with other presidents in that it is typically an opportunity to list achievements. And so a lot of times these speeches have a unifying theme about the strongness of the State of the Union, but then there is a laundry list of accomplishments or initiatives that the president wants to achieve. So I'd imagine that there will be some of that in the speech. Now, the tone depends. I mean, I'm looking at, a situation tonight where the Supreme Court, which has ruled against Trump on the tariff issue, many of its members may be sitting down front, right in front of him, and maybe there'll be targeted comments. That just sort of remains to be seen. We also have seen with President Trump in the past some give and take between the audience and the president during these speeches. Don't know if that's going to happen tonight or not, but we'll certainly be watching for it.
And it's interesting, we talk about listing achievements. At this particular point in time, a lot of the issues that maybe President Trump has been seen as strong on in the past are in the midst of lagging approval numbers when it comes to immigration. That has always been a strong point for President Trump, but we are in the midst of, obviously, a lot of headlines and controversy when it comes to immigration and customs enforcement. When it comes to tariffs and the economy, we just saw the Supreme Court strike down his ability to spread those tariffs in the way in which he did. That has been a major initiative of his first term. Foreign policy may have been something that he was willing to tout when he, in the midst of him creating a ceasefire in Gaza, but now much of our, a large portion of our Navy sits outside of Iran with questions surrounding that situation. So when you look at achievements that maybe typically he would list or that he would illuminate during a speech like this, with the time frame being what it is, with where some of those things are at in terms of public perception that we have seen from polls, do you expect it to look different than maybe a typical President Trump list of achievements would? I don't know if that question is overly reductive, but you can take it where you want.
So I think that clearly what the president is going to do tonight is try to reframe some of these issues that you just mentioned, particularly around the economy. I think that you're going to hear a lot about how President Trump's initiatives have increased, the economic situation in the country for the better. I think you're hear him talk about tax cuts that he implemented. I think you're also going to hear about foreign policy, certainly, and of course, I think that there's going to be kind of an attempt to create political narrative that is positive. How he handles that on the tariff issue, how he handles that on Iran, I think is going to be nuanced. I also think that it's going to be something that is going to certainly present an image on his part of success. Now, we're going into a midterm election, and so this is an early kind of kicking off, I think, for what maybe the issues are going to be in 2026. Certainly, the economy is going to be a big issue in a midterm election, as it always is. And there is a certain element of midterms as a referendum on the president. So I think that this is an opportunity for him to maybe regain the narrative, maybe explain some of the things that he is accomplished. Again, I would also look at maybe some of these extemporaneous aspects of his speech. I mean, Trump is best when he is off script sometimes because he has an energy that he derives from the audience. And when he is going off of a script from a teleprompter, sometimes his delivery is flatter. So again, I would be looking at all of that tonight, and certainly there is a huge political dimension to this speech in terms of not just President Trump, but Republicans in general.
And, we talk about the other side of the aisle. Many Democrats have said that they will abstain or they will not be attending this particular State of the Union. I've seen reporting that says no shows expected to be anywhere between 50 and 100 Democratic officials not going to the State of the Union. How is that something that is extremely rare? Is it even unprecedented, or do you have experience sort of observing that in the past from the opposite party to the speaking president?
There have always been individual members who may not attend for various political reasons, but this is a coordinated event, I think, that's unlike any that we've seen before. And part of it is there is a media strategy to this. And so in the last joint session of Congress where President Trump spoke, it was a raucous event, and we had people back and forth speaking with the president. There was handheld signs. And I think Democrats saw that as maybe not effective, not necessarily helpful for their kind of political point. And so we've seen this sort of strategy emerge in 2026 where it's going to be this sort of silent resistance and then this alternative event that has been organized around different talking points within the Democratic Party. We also have a response speech, the Democratic response speech. Now, that is very traditional in the sense that has been around since the 1960s, although it's taken various formats. But that's a means to sort of counter the State of the Union and its points and maybe present a counterpoint to some of the issues that were raised.
And of course, that counterpoint will be presented tonight by Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger. What does it say first about the Democratic Party that they have chosen Governor Spanberger to make that rebuttal?
Well, I think it's a strategic move. And I think that what Spanberger represents is a centrist Democrat who was able to outperform in 2025. And she presents an image, I think, for Democrats of saying this is what we are representing as a party. There could even be a type of there already is chatter around her electability at a national level as well. Now, this speech that she's giving is notoriously cursed in some ways. There have been many politicians that have given the response and that have been, the delivery has been awkward, or there's been gaffes. There's been moments where the speech didn't go well. So if you look back at the history of the speech, sometimes there is a sort of an underwhelming moment in these responses. And part of that is due to the fact that you had the State of the Union, which has all the pomp and ceremony of the event, and then juxtaposed against a speech that is given in a different format. So she's got a lot to do in that speech. And again, I think that it highlights her significance and really the kind of the larger message the Democrats are trying to present in 2026.
And you talk about them trying to send a centrist message by choosing Governor Spanberger. Would you say you were personally surprised that that is the route that Democratic leadership took?
I'm not necessarily surprised by it. I think Democrats have tried to figure out the best way to communicate an opposition to Trump, an anti-Trump, anti-MAGA kind of response. I think that certainly when you have a kind of a more central message, a centrist message, as it were, it maybe appeals to more voters. They, in 2026, also need to provide a kind of a coalescing around certain issues. And I think Spanberger is going to speak to that. And I wouldn't be surprised to see the economy play a huge role in her speech tonight, and particularly around the issue of affordability, which has been top of mind for politicians in 2025 and in 2026.
And of course played a huge role in her campaign. Affordability really one of the central points of her campaign for governor, which of course we know was ultimately ended up being very, very successful. I've also seen, I know that in State of the Unions, the president has his own guests who will be in the building, who he will oftentimes highlight. their achievements and their accomplishments and the relation those things have to their own presidency or to his own presidency. But I've also seen that Democratic lawmakers are bringing guests of their own. In this particular instance, it's been reported that will include those who have been negatively affected by ICE activity. It will include those who are victims of abuse at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein or the Jeffrey Epstein scandal, at least. But where does the spotlight come from when it comes to the guests of Democratic representatives? That's not something that is a part of the proceedings in any way. Is it simply to send a message to the president? Is it something that will get press coverage either way, which leads to certain reporting and headlines? I mean, where does the role of guests of those in attendance come into the proceedings here?
Guests certainly are a part of the political strategy, the larger political strategy. And I think that there's certain press coverage, maybe attention to various issues. Maybe there's also a message there for President Trump. The president's guests typically involve people who are kind of unifying figures where you maybe have an ovation given by both Republicans and Democrats. And so one of the things within the State of the Union is not just the speech itself, but also the optics of who's clapping and who's not, and those kinds of moments. And one of the things that the State of the Union even tries to do is present issues to where, the opposition has to applaud for because of the optics of the speech and the way that the viewers may perceive that. But certainly these guests are a unique factor, and I think they're meant to kind of highlight a political issue that may resonate with voters and may be picked up later on in these rallies that Democrats will have tonight and also in the future going into the midterms.
And then, of course, also in the room, as you mentioned right off the top, those Supreme Court justices, based on the reaction that we've seen to that decision, do you expect them to be openly addressed by President Trump during his speech based on what we know of his past State of the Unions and the reaction thus far to that particular ruling?
Well, it's hard to predict what will actually happen, but I do think the issue will be addressed. I would be surprised if it is not, and particularly tariffs will be addressed. Whether or not there's a direct addressing of the Supreme Court justices themselves, I don't know. That has happened before where there has been criticism of the Supreme Court in a State of the Union address, even prior to President Trump. However, that the Supreme Court justices present a unique kind of factor because they are there in a nonpartisan role. They do not oftentimes applaud. They do not show emotion. They're not part of the kind of the partisan political context, yet they are there representing a third branch of government. So that may be a unique aspect of this speech. And certainly I would not be surprised if there is not some sort of commentary by the president or maybe even direct commentary to the Supreme Court justices themselves. But again, we'll wait to see if that transpires.
And it's so interesting to hear, as someone who pays such close attention to these things and analyzes events like this, it's so interesting to hear the way you speak about the State of the Union, almost all the nuances that are involved, all the subtleties that are involved, the purpose behind each and every topic that is addressed and how it's addressed, almost to the point where it's a performance as much as it's a speech. The goal of eliciting certain reactions, both from the viewing audience and the audience in the room. I'm wondering, is there a moment from a past State of the Union that stands out to you as one that has kind of just always stuck in your mind, whether it can be something that is more on the serious side or something that you just remember because it was, elicited some other emotion?
Well, there have certainly been State of the Union addresses and addresses to the joint sessions of Congress that are not State of the Union that stand out. Famously, in President Obama's State of the Union after ACA was a political issue, we had a member of Congress shout at the president from the floor, and that stood out as a moment that's really reaching decorum. Now we see that exchange become normalized in some respects, but certainly the speeches themselves have standout moments. Now, it's interesting in this media world that we live in today, this will draw a large audience, a collectively large audience to watch, but we'll also see these aspects of the speech clipped into viral content potentially that will then be placed on social media and then utilized by both parties in their political ads and political purposes. So I think that there's just such resonance with this and such a collective kind of viewership of this that outsized media event and such an important event. And again, some of the statements that are made and some of the things that transpired during this speech, we will see repackaged again in the political cycle of 2026.
And, you bring up a great point. In a modern media landscape where there is so little in terms of the monoculture, you have NFL football, and then you've got the Oscars, and then that's essentially it for things that, a large portion of America gathers around the TV to watch. But the State of the Union does typically rate up near some of those larger events. But then at the same time, you have that dichotomy of so many people will only view this speech via snippets, via social media. When you examine social media's impact in terms of interpretation of the State of the Union, do you see it as more of a benefit because more people will at least be exposed to some of the comments, or do you see it as more of a detriment in that you are now at the will of the editor of those videos and those clips? I mean, do you view that in a certain way, the social media lens of the State of the Union address?
Well, it certainly is a polarizing dimension to it, because what happens is that you have a speech, and that may be something we look at tonight, like how long does this speech actually go? It may go for a very long time because President Trump has traditionally spoken longer in some of his national addresses and public addresses. But again, people not watching the full length may get a snippet of 30 seconds or something, and that encapsulates an entire issue. And then that frames that political issue for a wide swath of people. So again, I would be looking at this from a standpoint of, what is the sort of the snippets that become viral? What are these kind of tense exchanges at times, or what are some of these kind of soundbite moments within the speech that can be repackaged and repurposed by both Republicans and Democrats? How that affects people's perception is significant as well, because people we know don't necessarily look at context and nuance. They look at the larger they look at these smaller snippets rather than the larger body of work, and then say, okay, this is what this political issue is, and this sort of soundbite politics, but that's really the world that we live in.
And then last question for you, is there any one topic that you are most interested to see how it's framed?
I think the economy and the tariffs are going to be very interesting, and how this Supreme Court case is going to be framed, and just how acrimonious that may be as a topic for the president. I think that just given on the heels of this Supreme Court decision, and given the presence of the U.S. Supreme Court there tonight, it'll be interesting to see how that transpires.
All right, Mr. Myers, I can't tell you how much we appreciate your insight in giving us, helping us peel back the layers of what this address means, why it's so significant, and what to expect. Thank you so much for joining us. Enjoy the night. I know it'll be a busy one for you on into tomorrow, but we appreciate you taking a little time to hang with us here on Live Impact News.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Casey. That was a great breakdown from Casey Myers there. The State of the Union, as you can kind of sense just from talking to Casey, significant in a number of different ways, right? The presentation, the content, and then how it's interpreted by the audience, how the rebuttal goes with Governor Spanberger, how that is interpreted, how it's disseminated via social media, of course, the kind of a new aspect of society. Anytime that there's an event that is this significant, you then have the ensuing social media breakdown and interpretation. So a lot goes into this, and it'll be interesting to see what it's like in the room, and then how the viewing public reacts afterwards. So just awesome to have Casey on. Again, political communications expert from Virginia Tech University. And of course, we will have a full report on the State of the Union tomorrow on Live Impact News. For now, we're going to take a brief commercial break. We do have a couple live events going on, so we're going to go ahead and take a break, come back, and explore a few more topics for today. Okay, we are back on Live Impact, and we are going to go to a live event. Senator Mark Kelly, among those giving a press conference today in Washington, D.C. with other Democratic lawmakers. Let's head out to that press conference live right now.
That so far he has failed, and the American people are really not into this. He's violated my constitutional rights. He's violated the constitutional rights of thousands of people across the country, especially when you consider the folks in Los Angeles and Minnesota. We've got 2 dead Americans, scores of other beaten up by federal agents who are poorly trained and not following any kind of standards of procedures for law enforcement. I'm the son of 2 police officers. I know it's a hard job, but what these folks are doing in Minnesota is wrong, and I think in some cases it's criminal. They're going into people's houses without warrants. This agency is out of control and needs to be overhauled. I was in Munich last week. I think to say there is a profound loss of trust in the United States is, I think, even really comes up short of what our relationship is now with most of our allies. And I got to say, if you're Greenland, you're now afraid of us. It's going to take generations to repair the damage that this president did in just 1 year. So I'm not looking forward to this speech. You know, I expect the president to not be straight with the American people and to not have an explanation to them about why they are poorer and less safe. But I'll be in that chamber tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lujan. Thank you, Chuck. Everyone, thank you all for being here. Look, when you all are at the grocery store, just like people all over the country, you know if food is more expensive or if it's not. And the reason I say that is, as Senator Klobuchar reminded us moments ago, President Trump keeps calling all of this a hoax. The notion that food is more expensive, that everything President Trump promised would be less expensive is now more expensive. And all he's doing is putting more and more dollars in his own pocket. What Donald Trump's doing is just making life harder for each and every one of you, for each and every one of the people across America, for each and every one of us. His administration cut food assistance at a level that we've never even imagined could occur. Grocery prices remain high, forcing seniors, veterans, families, moms and dads, grandma and grandpas, and kids to simply pay more for less. All of this, well, we've heard time and time again, and we see it. All he's doing is finding ways to make himself richer. Take $1 from the American people, put it in his pocket. That's all he cares about. As every one of my colleagues has reminded us here today, as well as Leader Schumer, look, it just comes down to this. Costs, chaos, and corruption, one after another. Pick an issue. Pick a day. Pick an hour of the day. I mean, heck, even pick a time of the day when the president can't sleep and decides to go to social media and tell the American people how he's lining his own pockets, how he's creating more chaos, and he's not shy about the corruption. He just says he's going to do it. One lie after another. And that's what we're going to hear tonight. One lie after another from this president to the American people. He's going to tell them how handsome he is, how nice his hair looks. And he's going to ignore all the challenges that people are facing while complimenting himself and saying that the American people just don't understand what's going on. Look, as we come together tonight, let's not forget about the high costs that are hurting families, how expensive food is for each and every one of you in this room. You know the difference between the truth and the bullshit. There's something that we can do about this in coming together and just tell the facts. I hope that that's what comes across tonight while holding this president accountable, and I certainly look forward to hearing from Governor Abigail Spanberger, and from United States Senator Alex Padilla.
Thank you. Last but not least, Senator Gallego.
I always bring the rookie to be the cleanup hitter. First of all, thank you everyone for being here.
Has a 300 batting average.
I do. It gets you into the Hall of Fame. Look, what we're going to hear tonight is very simple. This president has made this country sicker and poorer. And if you look at every way that has occurred, it has been deliberative. Number one, what did this president do as soon as he got in? He went right after Medicaid and started cutting the most vulnerable people in this country. And I'm not talking just people in our urban areas. Rural Arizona. I traveled rural Arizona. I was talking to some of our hospital systems that are worried about how they're going to keep their systems open because they know now that this administration has abandoned them, and they're going to have to make some really hard decisions. Will they keep their OB ward open? Will they keep their x-ray machines open? Will they have to shut down the emergency room? Why? Because this president wanted to make sure they had enough money to give the richest of the richest a tax cut. And what was left over to that, they used to supercharge this massive, massive deportation policy that is racially profiling people, pulling over Americans, violating their Fourth Amendment rights, and killing Americans in the streets. That is what this president started with. And let's move on forward there. How much sicker can you get? When we all had an agreement, we all said, yes, healthcare costs are expensive. We all understand that things can be better. But the last thing we should do is pull the rug out from millions of Americans that rely on these healthcare subsidies. And now we have millions of Americans that are making a hard choice between, shall I buy health insurance for my family, or shall I just risk it and keep going? That president and these Republicans made that choice. There are millions of Americans right now that are suffering. Either they're having to pay more and now they're poorer, or they're not getting health insurance and now they're sicker. That was a decision by this administration. And every day they're making a decision that makes things harder and harder. We all talk about grocery prices. Let me tell you about grocery prices. I have 3 kids, all under the age of 10. I have to feed those kids, and it is expensive. Thank God I get a good salary, but I cannot imagine how someone like my mom, raising 4 kids on her own, can deal with these grocery prices every day. And then this president just treats the tariffs as if it's his little toy that he can manipulate his friends, bring down some bribes for the corruption that he keeps on doing, and everyday Americans are paying it. And guess what? Supreme Court just said you can't do it. Where is the refund that's going to come for these Americans? The average American paid $1,000 to $1,200 last year because of these tariffs. Are they getting the refund? No. The big corporations are going to get it. They're going to get it. But where is that family going to get that relief? It's not coming. It's not coming because this president does not care about working class people at all, and he is going to continue to make us sicker and poorer, and that's just what you're going to hear tonight. Thank you.
His batting average just went up higher.
Slugging percentage.
Slugging. Yes.
A significant number of members of your caucus are not attending the State of the Union. Are you disappointed by that? Have you urged members to attend?
No, I think it's up to each member to make his or her choice, and some are coming and some are going and some are not.
Do you think protests are possible?
Yes. Go ahead, ma'am.
So you said you're not going to negotiate in public on the DHS funding situation.
Mm-hmm.
If the president does bring up that during the speech tonight, will that change your calculations?
Well, it depends what he says. I mean, so far, they have not budged on the key issues like masks, like warrants, like oversight from state authorities. It depends what he says. So far, we've heard crickets from them, nothing. They're not negotiating. They're just trying to pass paper back and forth with no real changes. Yes.
Mr. Schumer, I understand you're meeting this afternoon with Secretary Rubio.
Yes.
To discuss Iran. What questions are you going to ask, and what message do you have?
Well, first and foremost, if they want to do something in Iran, and who the hell knows what it is, they should make it public and discuss it with the public and not keep it in secret. When you do these military operations in secret, it always causes longer wars, tragedy, more expenses, and mistake. Okay? Last one.
Thank you. Tomorrow, big hearing for the Surgeon General nominee. What do you make of that nominee? And what do you make of health policy of the Trump administration?
Well, I'm going to wait for the hearing, but his nominees thus far have been really bad, and this one seems to be the same way. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Good job.
All right, 3:05. 3:05.
If he's coming to our house.
All right, the People's Producer, Nia Campbell, coming to me just a little bit earlier there as I was still getting ready. That's okay. That's all right. You guys get a look behind the scenes every once in a while. And listen, it's a heavy day. A lot of political news today, a lot going on. So if you guys need to see the shoulder shimmy, then that is okay. All right, we are going to stay, however, with that political news. We just heard from Democratic lawmakers speaking about the upcoming State of the Union address, giving perhaps their view on what this year has contained thus far as the start of President Trump's second term. We do know from having spoken to Casey Myers before this that Trump will give his own framing of those activities during his second term, and that's kind of how the State of the Union goes. But we are going to take a listen to GOP lawmakers who had a press conference earlier today. Those were Democratic lawmakers. These are GOP lawmakers. So let's have a listen to Mike Johnson and others from just earlier on this Tuesday.
I got my box today because it doesn't go up and down. See, look how tall I look now. I cheat. Yeah? Well, good morning, everybody. So good to see you all. I want to first start by congratulating all of our Olympians. It was a phenomenal weekend. It was a phenomenal period of time to see people represent the United States of America. And I think if you watched any part of the hockey game, men's or women's, you really saw true Americans. And what I want to say is thank you for the American athletes who represented America and gave their best. And just compare and contrast to some of those athletes, and I won't even dignify them by giving them a name, that train in America, that live in America, that were born in America, who have enjoyed the freedoms that America has given them, and then they don't even have the respect for the country in which has given them so much to represent that country. I wonder why. I can think of about 20 million reasons why. But I noticed at the end, that person didn't get on a plane and go back to that communist country. They came back to the free country, the US of A, who is the best country in the world to give them that opportunity. And just compare and contrast with what we saw with the men's hockey team. They are proud to be an American, and they showed it, and they left everything on the ice. So congratulations to all the American athletes who trained here and have pride in their country. Under President Trump and Republicans, gas prices are at a 4-year low, and Americans' energy is roaring back. That's not luck, that's leadership. The bottom line is this: Republican leadership is working. Maybe not for the Washington bureaucrats, but it is working for the American people. And today, I want to introduce you to one of them. Standing next to me is Ben Hockenberry, a constituent of mine from Lake Orion, a West Point grad, father and small business owner. At Artemis Search Group, Ben helps American manufacturers grow and veterans find meaningful careers when they come home. Because of working families' tax cuts, Ben gets a small business deduction where he can reinvest, use to hire and actually grow his business here in America. And as a father of 3, he keeps more of his paycheck thanks to the expanded child care tax credit, and all 3 of his kids are eligible for the new Trump's savings account, jump-starting their own American dream. And Ben isn't the only one. Last week it was reported tax refunds are up 11% this year. That's real money back in your pockets. But again, you don't need to hear it from me. Ben is right here. So I'm going to yield the floor to him to share what these policies mean for him and his family. Ben?
Thank you, Congressman.
Here, let me move this for you. I don't need that.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. As the Congresswoman said, my name is Ben Hockenberry, and I am a proud small business owner from Lake Orion, Michigan, and a constituent of Congresswoman Lisa McClain. I own Artemis Search Group. We are an executive search firm that places veterans getting out of the military into jobs, specifically into the manufacturing segment. Like so many other business owners, the last few years have been working harder and harder just to stay even. And thanks to the Working Families tax cuts, my business finally has some breathing room. The 23% small business deduction will allow me to reinvest back into my company, support my employees, and plan for growth instead of uncertainty. In addition to my small business, this is also going to help grow other small businesses. That will be a good landing spot for the vets I work with. But it isn't just about my business, it's also about my family. I have 3 young children. The expanded child tax credit means more stability for parents like me who are raising kids and trying to build a better future. And with the new Trump accounts, my children will have a real financial foundation to build on as they grow up, something every parent hopes to provide for their children. Policies championed by President Trump and leaders like Congresswoman McClain are making a real difference. For my business, for my kids, and for families like mine across Michigan, these policies mean opportunity, security, and real hope for the future. Thank you. I'll hand it over to Whip Tophammer.
Thank you. Thanks, Ben. The State of the Union is only as strong as the state of its people. And under President Trump and Republican majorities in Congress, the American people are stronger than ever. Stronger because President Trump and Republicans have secured the border, restored safety to our communities, slashed wasteful government spending, and held fraudsters accountable, and delivered historic tax relief to hardworking Americans through the Working Families tax cut. As the 2026 tax season begins to unfold, we're hearing more and more about how this once-in-a-generation piece of legislation is benefiting Americans from every walk of life. Families are keeping more of their hard-earned money in their pockets. We're talking refunds increased by $1,000 or more on average, according to financial experts. To highlight just how impactful these tax cuts are, I'm honored to be welcoming 2 Minnesotans to the Capitol today for President Trump's State of the Union address. I want to thank Blaine Police Chief Brian Padani for joining us here this morning, standing behind me. For Chief Padani and the police force he oversees, no tax on overtime is a game changer. Not only will this provision allow our men and women in blue to keep more of their hard-earned dollars in their pockets, it's also going to help Chief Padani with recruitment and retention, making our communities stronger and safer. Blaine Brothers Board Chairman Dean Daly will also be joining us later today to highlight how provisions like the 100% immediate full expensing are allowing small, family-owned businesses like Blaine Brothers to grow. The benefits of this once-in-a-generation tax bill reach far and wide. While monumental in its impact, tax relief is only part of President Trump's successful economic agenda. The president inherited an utterly broken economy and has spent the past 13 months putting the train back on the tracks. Inflation continues to cool, as Lisa talked about. Wages are up. Prices at the gas pump are down to record lows. By nearly every measure, Republicans' economic agenda has delivered real financial freedom for the American people. Freedom to buy a home, freedom to start a business, freedom to grow your family, freedom to pursue the happiness our nation's founders recognized as a God-given right. And it's only been 13 months. Thanks to President Trump, the State of the Union is strong and getting even stronger. Again, I want to thank Chief Padani and Mr. Daly for making the trek to Washington, even in what some would call inclement weather. Not really for us from Minnesota, or Michigan, by the way. These 2 leaders from the largest city in my district represent the best of Minnesota and put on full display how real Americans are benefiting from Republican leadership here in Washington. With that, speaking of leadership, I turn it over to our majority leader, Steve Scalise.
All right, as Steve Scalise takes the podium on that pre-recorded sound with GOP leaders, Hakeem Jeffries has taken the podium live in Washington, D.C., the House Minority Leader. Let's go live and listen in on what Jeffries has to say.
Reluctant to do it, but the American people have abandoned them, even on immigration enforcement, where Donald Trump's public approval ratings are way underwater on an issue that he thought was his signature issue. That's gone, just like the rest of his presidency.
With regard to Iran, is there anything you anticipate that you could hear that would allow the Democrats to support military action in Iran?
The American people are of the view, first of all, let's be clear about Iran. There was a military strike executed by Donald Trump last year. We were told that the nuclear program in Iran had been completely and totally obliterated. Not my words, Donald Trump's words. And so now we're to believe that there's an exigent circumstance where Donald Trump may need to strike militarily in order to prevent Iran, presumably, from achieving its nuclear ambitions. Wait, what happened to Iran's nuclear program being completely and totally obliterated? Donald Trump's words, not our words. Clearly, he was lying to the American people, or he's lying right now. And so there's nothing that he can say to the American people that will have any degree of credibility at this point in time. I'm interested, and I'll listen to what members of his administration are going to say at this secure briefing. But I also plan to press them on the claim that Donald Trump himself made about the Iranian nuclear program and what the great urgency is right now that you've assembled an armada, potentially dragging America into another failed, foreign, forever war that is doomed to hurt the American people, not help us. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so we saw some of the final comments from House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries there ahead of tonight's State of the Union address. Now we're going to take a brief commercial break. We've got about 15 minutes left in the stream. Let's take a break, and then we'll finish things up here on Live Impact News. Okay, back here on Impact News, we're going to go live out to Washington, D.C., where Senator Tim Kaine is on the floor of Congress right now speaking. And let's take a listen to the Virginia senator.
1796.
Okay, well, that was not the most fortuitous timing we've had here on Live Impact News. I think we got the last 2 words of Senator Kaine's speech on the floor of Congress. So instead, we will give you an update sent to us from Senator Kaine's office not long ago while we were on air here on Live Impact News. If you'll just give me a brief moment to find it, an announcement from both Senator Mark Warner and Senator Tim Kaine as they introduced legislation to require full refunds from President Donald Trump's illegal tariffs that were at least struck down by the Supreme Court in the manner in which those tariffs were applied. Now, to date, the Trump administration has collected an estimated $175 billion in illegal tariff revenues, raising taxes on products from nearly every country on earth and jacking up prices for American families, according to, again, Mark Warner and Tim Kaine. The Tariff Refund Act of 2026 would require the full refund with interest of those funds. So something to keep an eye on as we go here, and an update that we got from Senator Kaine and Senator Warner's offices right around 1:24 today, just over an hour ago here. Okay, so hopefully that makes up for the fact that we were very late getting to Senator Kaine on the floor of Congress. Instead, what we're going to do today is we're going to continue with our coverage of the crash that happened over a year ago now, where a military Black Hawk helicopter collided with a commercial airline flight above the Potomac River in Washington, D.C. We've heard quite a bit from various agencies and boards as they attempt to make sure that something like this never happens again, as they look to analyze and investigate how something like that could have been possible. Over 60 people passed away in that crash. And what we have today is not only some major officials speaking, but testimonies from what appears to be those loved ones, friends, family of those who were impacted in some of these testimonies. So let's take a listen with more updates on that horrible crash over a year ago above the Potomac.
Thank you. On January 29, 2025, First Officer Sam Lilly reported for work to do something he loved, to fly safely and to transport precious souls from one place to another for work or recreation, to reunite them with family members. That did not happen on January 29, 2025. 67 lives were lost that night, and Audrey's correct. Loss is too gentle of a word. But we are here primarily, my husband and I, because of Sam. However, we're also here for these crew members. We're here for the crew members of PAT 25, 3 individuals who were faithfully serving our nation. And we're also here for all of the passengers on Flight 5342, bright futures that were lost in that night. This is also about every single family that trusts our national airspace each time they board an aircraft. We cannot change what happened that night, but we can take action today. We can decide what happens next. That is up to the elected members in the House. Later today, they will have an opportunity to vote on the Rotor Act. The NTSB conducted a thorough, independent investigation. They analyzed data, systems, policies, and procedures. Their recommendations are clear, informed, and grounded in science. The Rotor Act advances the most critical recommendations of the NTSB recommendations out of the final report. Specifically, ADSBN with a clear mandate, as well as repealing Section 373 of the NDAA that allows the military to approve waivers to operate without ADSB out operational. This is not partisan. It's not political. This is about human beings, and it's about aviation safety. My husband, Tim, is an experienced Army helicopter pilot. He flew this very route. He is also type rated on a CRJ. He is a commercial aviation, private aviation now, fixed wing pilot. He and I have spent the last year engaging with aviation professionals, legislators, and regulators. We're not speaking from emotion alone. We're speaking from data, systems knowledge, and from an understanding of how these layered safety systems must work together. We cannot allow these known risks to remain unaddressed. As a result, we urge every member to vote today yes on the Rotor Act. We urge leadership to ensure swift passage and full implementation. We urge the responsible agencies to act with urgency because implementation matters as much as passage of this legislation. Safety delayed is safety denied. Safety that should have been in place on January 29th, 2025. Sam believed in professionalism, discipline, and continuous improvement. That is what aviation demands, and that is why our families are here advocating. Rotor Act is just a first step. Alert can come alongside and through markup provide a companion act to implement the other recommendations of the NTSB. The families who lost loved ones on January 29th deserve action, not delay. Please take action today. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry, very much. Next hear from Doug Lane, Rhode Island.
My name is Doug Lane. I lost my wife, Christine, and my son, Spencer. He was 16 on flight 5342. In the days following the collision, I sat alongside these and other family members in hours-long NTSB briefings, desperately trying to understand how it was possible for something like this to happen. And the more I learned about how the evening of January 29th, 2025 unfolded, the less any of it made sense to me. I was shocked by how much of the burden of avoiding mid-air collisions falls into the hands of pilots and air traffic controllers, humans, operating under tremendous task pressure, communicating over fragmented and incomplete radio transmissions. It was inconceivable to me that in the age of GPS-enabled smartphones in every pocket, that there was no way for pilots flying aircraft with price tags in the tens of millions of dollars to see visually whether other aircraft in the airspace were on a collision course. What I soon learned is that this technology does exist, and it has for decades. ADS-B-In is not emerging technology like you so disingenuously heard it so just disingenuously described on the House floor yesterday. It's mature and proven technology that the NTSB has been recommending for 20 years. But the aviation industry and military are dragging its feet on its adoption, and the FAA has ignored repeated recommendations from the NTSB to make ADS-B-In mandatory. This piece of paper I'm holding is dated February 14th, 2008. It's a letter from the NTSB to the FAA commenting on their rulemaking process for ADS-B. It attempts to correct the FAA's flawed assumption that ADS-B-In is not required to keep our airspace safe. They noted the equipage of aircraft with ADS-B-In capability will provide an immediate and substantial contribution to safety, especially during operations in and around airports. Does that sound familiar? 154 days after this letter was written, my son Spencer was born. He lived life at full speed, always chasing adventure, human connection, and ever more ambitious challenges, all of which he found living out his dream as a competitive figure skater. 16 years, 6 months, and 12 days after this letter was written, he was dead. 363 days after that, I learned from the NTSB that ADSB-In recommended in a letter before he was born would have saved his life, my wife's life, and 65 other beautiful people. The FAA had a lifetime to get ADSB right in their safety recommendations and in their requirements and rulemaking process. They had Spencer's entire life to get this right through rulemaking. They failed. And we are not going to let ADSB go off to rulemaking again. The ALERT Act that you heard so much about on the House floor yesterday does not address ADSB-In. It sends it to backroom rulemaking processes and committees stacked with special interests who will pick it apart until it dies a slow death. They killed ADSB-In in that way before, and they will do it again if we let them.
Okay. Passionate, emotional comments from speakers today discussing that crash that took over 60 lives above the Potomac more than a year ago, as they continue to pursue accountability and change that could ensure that something like this never happens again. And that is how we'll end our stream today. Of course, the State of the Union, 9 p.m. tonight Eastern Time. We anticipate breaking it all down here on Live Impact News tomorrow. But for the time being, that does it for us right now on 13 News Now Plus. We hope to see you tomorrow.